I don't know that the term social practice is great. I don't know that it's bad. The only thing I would say is that the term social has become so, not just in art, but in other, in social, other sciences and so on, has become coded to mean as a kind of ingredient. So we say social practice, the ingredient is the social. There was, in a similar way, or the assumption is, sometimes I feel, the assumption is the social is the same as painting in, when we say a painter. So you make things with the social. So the social is this object-like event thing. And that, I think, brings some problems to this, has advantages in that we don't have to constantly define what it is that we're doing. We can just label it and put it away and then do the thing we do. But disadvantages in that when we start to think of the social as this ingredient that is almost an object-like thing, that it abridges a lot of the things that actually happen within that structure of coming together around aesthetics to do something collectively. Which is what really, if I were to define this is social practice, I would say coming together to do something with the goal of creating an aesthetic event, particularly, sometimes an object, less times, but particularly an event that changes a situation or a person or a group of people, mostly a group of people. So as you were saying, the collective becomes very important. So I do think that as we become more savvy and become more sophisticated in describing this space of being together around aesthetics, that we have to be careful not to quantify or qualify the social as give it the qualities of the object, and therefore give the qualities of the object maker to artists, which is already hard enough to do, because the practice of the artist is so coded in relation to object making that I find that so even social practitioners are constantly having to test themselves or to figure out a way out of that individualism that is so built into the figure of the artist. And curators as well. I mean, we also know the curator who, in the guise of the artist author, makes very authorial decisions. And that's fine. I mean, it's all a negotiation. Let's say it's all a negotiation. The other thing that I find when we say social practice that I find problematic is the assumption that any social practice project is more ethical than anything else. And I find that problematic because it foregrounds then the necessity for people to feel good about themselves in relation, or better than others. And I don't actually think that's the case. I think we can find some good old-fashioned political artists that make objects that maybe do things in a very ethical way. They still produce art and they still engage perhaps in whatever way with a market that we may be uncomfortable with, but it's not necessarily unethical, right? So I find that sometimes when all of this is conflated, you do social practice, therefore you are against the market, therefore you are more ethical, it's an assumption that shouldn't be made. We need to look at the examples that are out there and parcel them out and really analyze them before we can make those assumptions and before we can feel good about ourselves for participating in these things. Because, of course, some of the most egregious and horrible projects happen in the social.
So maybe you could give us an example.
Well, no, my examples of things that happen in the social that are terrible, I mean, we have tons of examples of people coming to, I mean, any kind of voting situation. We were just talking about votes in Los Angeles, that people deciding not to vote to support the labeling of genetically engineered food. I mean, that is a social thing. It's how you manage it, right? And there are many good examples of social practice. I don't know that I want to sort of categorize that yet or make those distinctions here right now. But maybe I can be more self-analytical about some things that I think I have done, that I know I have done, that I think may be social practice. And we can look at it more carefully. I did a project, I'm only talking about the stuff that I've done in the past, not what I'm going to do, which hopefully will be more better practices. I did a project in October 2011, which was called Proyecto Coyote. It was done under the auspices of the Encuentro Internacional de Medellín with a lot of other foundation support, the Holdenshall Garage and INVA in Mexico and so on. And I had been invited by Marcos Ramirez Serre to do an exhibition. So this is a funny thing in the art world, right? So the biennial, which was curated by Bill Kelly, Eva Greenstein, and others in Medellín, as part of a project that is an encuentro, so an encounter rather than a biennial, centered on pedagogy, and had many social practitioners as participants in the show, in the project, and had many good practices in terms of giving long-term commitment to engaging with communities in Medellín and so on. The context of Medellín itself is very unique because it's a city that has really truly for many years, since the 90s, created certain ways of relating to politics and to each other that have to do with collective thinking, with reactivating politics in a completely different mode as a kind of social improvement and social engagement and so on. And with the Fajardo mayor in 2004 to 2006, really that took a different level of acceleration and has been a real example, at least for many cities in the north of Mexico, of a place that had been overrun by drug violence and narco violence and military violence, and has sort of regained those spaces. The narrative is in some cases exaggerated, and in others it is not. It is in fact an extraordinary place. And so many people in Tijuana, where I used to live, we were all wondering, well, the city was suffering under the heavy burden of violence from the drug cartels. We were wondering how to learn from that example. So when Estación Tijuana was invited to present a group of an exhibition of artists from Tijuana, our proposal was that we would take the artists there. We wouldn't take the objects, we would take the artists. So in fact, the project was to extend the invitation to me and to Marcos Ramirez Serre to do a kind of expansion of our role and to invite another 13 artists, activists, and architects to come with the express purpose of simply learning from their equals. So my role there was to engage, to help them figure out who their equals were, and to help them have only social situations, with the aim of generating intimate moments of communication.